I'm David Smith. I'd like to introduce you to the Xerox 8010 Star Information System. This is a new computer designed for office professionals. It consists of a processor, a large display screen, a keyboard, and a pointing device called the mouse. Stars are normally connected together by the Ethernet local area network. This not only allows stars to communicate with one another, but it also lets them share resources such as file storage and printers. The mouse has a ball on the bottom that rotates as the mouse slides across a flat surface. This moves a cursor on the screen in corresponding motions. It has two buttons on top that can be sensed under program control. You can use these buttons to specify objects and destinations for commands. The keyboard consists of a standard typing array and three groups of function keys. The left group contains the generic functions: delete, copy, move, and show properties. These four are used throughout the system. For example, you use the same function key, move, to move a character in text, a line in an illustration, a fraction in an equation, or a document in a file drawer. The top group of keys consists of common text formatting functions, making text bold, italic, underlined, super or subscripted, or in a larger or smaller font. The right group of keys consists of miscellaneous functions for getting online assistance, defining and expanding abbreviations, stopping ongoing operations, and others. The display screen shows your working environment. We call this the desktop. It is an electronic log for an office. On the screens are small pictures or icons representing familiar office objects. This turned black because I pointed to it with the mouse and clicked the mouse button. We call this selecting the object. Selected objects highlight in reverse video. You can then operate on the selection with the delete, copy, move keys, and other keys. Let me select some of the other icons on the desktop. This is a folder, a records file, a file drawer, 3270 and teletype terminals, printers, and in and out mail baskets. Using the move key, you can arrange your desktop in any way you like. Move is the most powerful command in the system. It replaces a large number of conventional computer commands, which we will point out as we go along. The copy command is also a powerful one in Star. It establishes a paradigm for creating. In order to create a new document, for example, you copy an existing one. Typically, Star users construct blank documents to act as form path sources for new ones. Making a copy of one of these blank documents is like tearing a sheet off a pad of paper. The ability of users to make their own form paths is an example of the user tailorability built into the system. The Show Properties command allows you to display and change the properties of an object, such as the name of an icon. We will discuss properties later. In addition to moving, copying, deleting, and showing properties, you can open an icon to see what's inside. You do this by selecting the icon and pushing the Open key. The enlarged form is called a window. Every icon has its own window. This is a document window, displaying the contents of a document. One of the icons is called the directory. It is like a supply cabinet, providing access to resources on the Ethernet. Suppose a new printer has just been connected to the network and you want to be able to print on it. You open the directory window and the printing category of resources, and the window displays all of the printers available. You don't have to remember which ones are available or their names. The window shows them to you. You select the one you want and copy it to the desktop using the copy key. No further initialization is necessary. The printer is now ready for use. This is an example of how the STAR user interface relies on seeing and pointing as opposed to remembering and typing. There is no file or retrieve command in STAR. Filing is done by moving an icon into or out of a file drawer. These are electronic analogs of the drawers in an office filing cabinet. File drawers are physically stored on file servers connected to the Ethernet. These are local ones stored on file servers in my building in Palo Alto. These are stored on file servers in Los Angeles. You can have as many or as few file drawers on your desktop as you want. Regardless of where they're stored, you interact with them in the same way. When you open a file drawer, it displays a filing window. Each object stored in the file drawer is represented by a miniature icon, a name, and some other information. The names need not be unique or even present. For example, there are 2 copies of the document named NCC script. The dates tell me which is the latest version. Filing is accomplished by editing filing windows. You can select an object with a mouse and move or copy it out to the desktop. This transfers the object from the file server over the Ethernet to the local disk attached to your STAR workstation. You can also move it from the desktop into a file drawer, or out of one file drawer and into another for straight server-to-server transfers. Moving deletes the object from its old location. Copying leaves the original behind unchanged. Similarly, there is no print command. Printing is accomplished by moving an object to a printer icon. When you do this, a special window called an option sheet automatically appears. This is a dedicated form-like environment that is widely used in STAR to supply arguments to commands or to show properties of objects. Its purpose is that it makes all of the options visible. You don't have to remember what they are. In this case, you can specify the number of copies to print and whether you want the document repaginated before it is printed. Let's print this document and then walk over and pick up the output. As you can see, the screen closely approximates the appearance of a printed page. Let me close this document and mail it to someone. As with filing and printing, there is no send mail or receive mail command. Instead, to mail a document or a folder or a record file, you simply move it to the Out basket icon. When you do this, a mailing option sheet appears into which you can enter the names of recipients and set other options. I won't mail this now. Instead, let me see what mail I have received. Mail is delivered to in-baskets. When you open an in-basket icon, a window appears which looks much like a filing window. The fields in the window are mailing related. The recipients of the mail, the date it was sent, who it was from, and the name of the item. Here is a piece of Japanese mail. This was prepared on a Japanese version of STAR. There are also European versions. To read your mail, you simply select it and push the Open key. The in-basket window is replaced with the contents of the mail. Notice that any STAR document can be sent through the mail.
Dave has given you an overview of STAR's simple methods for dealing with fairly standard operations like filing, printing, and electronic mail. These facilities are made simple because of STAR's desktop and associated icons. My name is Charles Irby. I would like now to focus more on the facilities STAR provides for dealing with the contents of documents and record processing. On my desktop, I have a document named John's Report open. Like all icons, when they're open, they occupy a portion of the screen called a window, and each window has a header with a title along the top and a few commands, usually toward the left end of it. Along the right edge of it is a vertical scrolling mechanism, and along the bottom is a horizontal scrolling mechanism. I'll do a little of that right now, just slide the image sideways, and then I'll put it back. The vertical scrolling mechanism allows me to either change pages or slide the image up and down. What I'll do right now is simply flip to the next page. So this is page 2 of my document. Notice there's a heading up at the top of the page, and then a single column of text with a figure in the middle of it, and then more text below it. There's a little P up at the top of this, which lets me go to the previous page, so I'll simply do that and go back to the title page of this document, which is the first page, and then back to the second page again. So now we're back where we were. Well, I can also slide the image up a little bit at a time, as I'm doing right now, and this allows me to see the boundaries between pages. So for example, here's the bottom of page 2, and here's page 2's page number, the boundary between the pages, the heading for page 3, and you'll notice that page 3 starts off in a 2-column format. There are mechanisms in STAR that allow you to change the number of columns on pages. If I want to see all of page 3, then I simply click the little N again, and I now see the 2 columns of page 3. And you notice that there's an equation right here on the page, and we'll come back and deal with that in a moment. Let's just go on through the rest of the document. This is page 4. It's just another 2-column page. And this is page 5. It happens to have a bar chart illustration over in the left column and a short right column. In fact, what I would like to do right now is add some text to this document right here. So let me just slide this up a little bit and open up another document. Now, when I open up another document, what's going to happen is that STAR will automatically partition this portion of the screen into 2 windows. It'll take half as much space for this upper one, and then it will use the bottom space for the new one that I opened. So very shortly you'll see this thing be cut in half, and here's the second window appearing. Now the second document is one of quite a different form. This is a page of instructions for doing a project. It happens to have a figure in it along with various text. You'll notice that lots of different typefaces and things like that. This is more of an architectural rendering, a little more sophisticated graphics than we have seen so far. What I'm going to do is slide this image up a little so that I can get to the text just beyond a figure, which is what I'm after. Here's the paragraph that I wanted. In STAR, when you click the mouse button over a character, then what happens is it highlights that particular character. You'll see I can do that to any of several characters. If I click a second time on the same place, then it will select the word that contains that character. And if I click a third time, it selects the sentence that contains that word, and a fourth time selects the entire paragraph that contains that sentence. Now, paragraph is in fact what I wanted, so I'm simply going to hit the copy key as Dave was doing earlier, and I'm going to copy it into this upper document. And I do that by simply hitting copy key and selecting a paragraph in the upper document that I want it to follow, and the new paragraph will appear here. Now you notice whereas in the old document this paragraph occupied a single wide column, since this is a 2-column page, it's automatically adjusted to be as narrow as it needs to be to fit into this column, but it hasn't picked up the inner line spacing of these other paragraphs. There's a key on the keyboard labeled same, and by simply pushing that and pointing to one of the paragraphs I'd like it to be the same as, then it simply changes the format of this paragraph. Okay, so now it's double spaced and all just as the other paragraph was. This is basically an optimization for a general mechanism called a property sheet. And if you notice down in the right-hand corner of the screen now, this property sheet for this paragraph is appearing. This is a little window that lets me set the various parameters of a paragraph. So in fact, I can make it left flush centered or right flushed, or I can make it justified, and this one's currently justified, and that's indicated by a black highlighting. And then I can set indentations from the left and right margin. Let's actually change that now, and let's bring it in, say, three spaces from the left and let's say 3 spaces from the right. And I can also change the spacing. So let's make it 1.5 line spacing. And then let's also change the character properties. In switching to the character properties, it's actually going to perform the indenting. So now this is indented from where it was. And now down here are the character properties that I can specify for the characters that make up that paragraph. First of all, you'll notice that there are a number of different type styles that I can pick. And for each type style, there's a size that I can pick. So if, for example, I change to this type size, then those are the sizes I can use. If I pick that one, in fact, only 10 and 12 are available. So let's go back to the modern style that it was in and make it be 14 point. Now, these are what are called mutually exclusive choice parameters. If I pick one, the current choice gets turned off. These down here are called state parameters. They're independent, so I could have it be bold and italic both, or even bold and italic and strikeout. So let's take a look at how this appears now. So the text now is in 14 point, bold, and it's also got what we call strikeout. In other words, a line through the middle of it. Now, text editing works just the same as the move and copy paradigm that Dave was showing you before. I simply select, for example, a word and say move and point to a new place, and it moves that word down here. Or I might say copy and select another word, and it puts a copy of that word there. I can point at any place and start typing, and it simply goes in place, and the paragraph stays justified as I type. Okay. Now let's go back and look at the graphic illustration on page 2 of this document. And to do that, first let me close this lower window with my project instructions on it. I don't need that anymore. And use the scrolling area in the center here to go back to a particular page. And I do that by using this to represent the beginning of the document and this to represent the end of it. And somewhere in between are all of the pages that make up the document. And as I point to a particular place in here, then up on the top of the screen is an indication of which page that will actually be. So if I push down here, for example, I see up at the top of the screen that this is page 2. So if I let up, then it will take me directly to page 2. And here we are on page 2. Now this figure that's on the middle of the page, it exists in a little picture frame that I'll show you here. And this frame is normally invisible. You can control whether it's showing or not. It's invisible until you start operating on the graphics, and then it lets you see where it is. And this frame is anchored to this text by a little character, which happens to be right here. And that causes this figure to follow this text as closely as it wants. But I can change that. And let me look at the properties of this whole frame over on the right-hand side of the screen. And you'll see that there are other parameters that I can specify for this frame as an entire unit. And in particular, I can say, for example, that I'd like it at the top of the column, or centered in the column, or in the bottom of the column, or as it was floating immediately following its reference. I can also change the type and structure of the border that surrounds it. So let's go ahead and leave that the way it was and actually perform a little graphics editing. Just as I could select text and move and copy and delete it, I can also select pieces of an illustration. You'll see them highlighted here as I select them. And if I select something and hit a copy key, then that particular object gets copied and I can simply place it down where I want. If I hit the move key, then it moves the original to some new location. If I hit delete, then it goes away. I can also select a number of things, just as I could select a number of characters, and I can copy the whole thing. There are a few additional commands for graphics that make sense that don't make sense for text. And one of those is to select something and stretch it, make it bigger. Another is to simply insert a line someplace. And a line can also be stretched. and made to point wherever you want. Lines can also have arrowheads, as this one does, and they can be various thicknesses. I can also select a rectangle and change its properties to, say, have a gray interior. Again, if I take this and stretch it, then that interior will continue to be gray. Okay, so that gives you some feeling for how the graphics is done. All of these things are combinations of lines and rectangles and triangles, some of which are shaded. And it's a very simple editing interface. Now let's go look at that equation on the next page, and I'll go through exactly how it is that such an equation is edited in Star. This equation already partially exists, and what I'll do is add another term to it. And what I'm going to do that is to use what we call a virtual keyboard, which I'm going to cause to appear down at the bottom of the screen. Now, a virtual keyboard is basically a way of redefining the meaning of each of the keys on the main typing array of the keyboard. And right now it's set to the English mode, and if I change it by pushing another key on the keyboard, then it takes on the meaning of the equation. So those are different symbols that I can put into equations, or some different mathematical symbols that I can use, or some logic symbols that I can use, or Greek characters, or some general purpose office symbols. I can also say set it to French or German or Spanish or Italian, or in general all of the accented characters on the European keyboards. Well, let's go back now and do an equation. So what I'd like to do is simply add a new term to this equation. So let's say subtract another term, which will be a fraction. So I'm going to use this virtual keyboard to pick up a fraction. And in the numerator, I'm going to put a sum, let's say from I equals 1 to n. And within that, let's put a subscripted figure. So again, I'm going to go to use the special keyboard, and I'm going to use a subscripted character. And the subscripted character I'll make be a Greek lambda. Okay, and in the subscript I'll put an I. And let's put nothing else. So let's come down to the denominator of this fraction. And let's see, let's put a product there. So again, I'll go use the special keyboard, put a product over I. And here, let's put another script, say capital X, and let's make that I cubed. Okay, and you'll notice that the 3 sits right on top of the I, as it should in a properly formed equation. As I type this equation, it automatically centered itself vertically and horizontally, and it became properly typeset after every keystroke. That's a fundamental part of our whole editing paradigm.